All right, welcome to the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. Today I'm joined by Matt Soucoup, and we're going to be looking at the reliable web app pattern for .NET.
Indeed, we are, John. John, I got to jump back just a quick second. Where did that music come from? That's the best
It's super
on-hold
fancy,
music,
right?
on-hold music ever. Did you?
Yeah, the studio set it up for us.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from time to time, James will say like, "Hey, we need new this or that," and we ask the studio, and they're like, "Boom!" And I don't know, they went a little extra this time.
Nice. I was going to make sure it's licensed. I didn't want to get anybody get in trouble for having a cool music that wasn't licensed. But
right, exactly. No, yeah, it's pretty impressive. And as always, like we've got people all over the world, like literally, I guess. Christopher, it's great seeing everyone check in from all around. Yep. So I'm going to jump right into it. First, I'm OCD. I see something slightly wrong on the screen. You have to.
It's my face is on here. Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Yeah. So, and this is actually the first show we've done in a bit. Last week, our guest canceled. The week before was July 4th weekend in the States. So it's nice to be back. All right, let's pop on in with our community links. So I will shuttle us over here. I will paste in the links. Doing that copying and the pasting. And these links are also at there. Okay. And they go right over my face, which is awesome. Okay. They're in the description. They're all over. Okay. So first thing is .NET 8 Preview 6. We're in the time when previews are coming out all the time. So some of the things that I saw in here of interest for ASP.NET developers, we've done, so we linked over to it there. Some of the big things are system text JSON improvements, a lot of stuff going on there. There is also metrics, and there's more about this in the ASP.NET post. And then also the options validation source generator. There's a lot of work going on in source generators, which really kind of transparently help improve your code speed. So for instance, you build options and then it generates faster source and can kind of replace that in there. So that's that. Next up is ASP.NET Core updates. So a lot going on with Blazor. I'm told we're working towards kind of the templates are really going to kind of come together in around the August timeframe. But there's a lot of stuff happening there with Blazor for things like form model binding, the page navigation and form handling and DOM state and stream rendering, a lot of things that will make the combined client and server model work more smoothly. There's stuff also for metrics. So again, this is to allow you to more smoothly instrument your application. This is another just kind of quality of life thing. This is when you're debugging your code. Previously, it would say a lot of unhelpful information in the debugger, and now it actually will kind of drills down and shows the information that you're debugging.
That is much better. Much better.
Something funny here. I was brainstorming with Dan Roth. I'm like, who should we have on Community Stand-Up? I was like, first of all, who's doing all this cool JSON stuff, which was in the previous post? He's like, oh, that's James Newton King, but he's out this month. I was like, okay, cool. Well, what about this debugging experience? Also James Newton King. So James is maybe doing he's working a little too hard. But.
Yeah, no wonder why he needs vacation.
Yeah. So, and this is not, this is an example, but if you look over the past few releases, there have been a lot of other ones where it's just kind of like, okay, showing the type of the logger is not super helpful. Let's actually show the information in there. So, yep. Okay, so these system.web.adapters, this is part of the modernization work that the team has been building. We released recently a whole series of videos that help show how to modernize your applications. And what the system web adapters do is they allow you, as you're migrating your applications from .NET Framework to modern .NET, .NET Core, .NET 5, .NET 6. A lot of the time, legacy applications have some sort of dependency on system.web. And so these are adapters that allow you to port your applications forward. So iModule support. There's also stuff in here for custom key serializers, and as well iHTML string. Some neat stuff too for Blazor and web forms. So a lot of time people are needing to move their applications forward, and this allows you, makes it simpler to use Blazor and Razor components for that. Really nice stuff the team's doing there. Also, a neat thing is that they, I talked to them in depth. Actually, for this, the author of this post is Taylor Southwick, and he was one of the proctors at the Reliable Web App workshop that I helped with also at Build. So I got to sit and chat with him quite a bit about the work they're doing there, and they're actually this is based on work as the Microsoft Consulting Services, or I forget the team name, but they go out and help, right?
Customers.
They help they help customers migrate large legacy applications, and then they kind of help then they fold that back into some kind of redistributable guidance and code.
So John, before you move on, let me ask you one quick thing. Taylor mentions web forms, and for me, web forms was the best thing that we ever created. I love web forms. And it seems like now we were like all spas before, right? Everything's on the client side, and now it seems we're kind of going back to server side. What do you think? Is that true? Are you getting that feeling too? We're all going back to server side rendering?
You're asking the hard questions. The problem is, I think we kind of overcorrect in the industry back and forth, right? Web forms were very productive, really easy to drop controls on and hook stuff up and do things. But then very quickly, all my applications and any apps I worked on they would have tons of code in the events, and they had these really complex dependency trees, and they got like really kind of, and so then they, components were nice, but server-side components that were writing a bunch of HTML was kind of a mess. So then we moved to MVC. I'm like tempted to go and grab my stack of MVC books that I wrote, and I was like, MVC is so much cleaner. But then MVC, we did miss those controls were super productive. I'm personally kind of seeing this move. We there was like jQuery, and then there was like Bootstrap, and there were a lot of things that kind of were moving towards components. Then we got web components, and then I think we went maybe a little overboard on the client side components, and I do see a lot more moving to the server side for simplicity.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of how it always goes in software development. It's just a pendulum back and forth. And you've been doing it as long as we have, John. You agree?
I know. It's funny that you point that out, though, because this specifically, they're talking about like, this actually skips 2 cycles, right? Because this from web forms up to Blazor, you're kind of skipping a lot of the traditional server-side rendering, and now you're moving to server-side rendering with components, and so this is kind of like, just jump over to Blazor. So,
maybe we'll get it, we're going to hit that happy medium with .NET 8 and Blazor. Is it united or unified? Whatever words, you pick your happy path.
My latest is, I think they're just calling it the Blazor app template, and they're not like, when they started calling it Blazor United, people were getting a little confused, like it was yet another Blazor thing they needed to learn. And this is kind of like merging the chocolate and peanut butter of client and server side Blazor and just making one thing. So good stuff. And we do, I'm planning to set up more community stand-ups on that when we can dig into those actually ship templates. Because so. Cool. Here's some other just kind of neat quick things. This is caching abstraction. So Mark, in his work on Stack Exchange Redis and just other things, does a lot of stuff with distributed caching, and they see some patterns or anti-patterns that people are using and abusing. And so the idea is they created, in this case, it's just a simple set of extensions that you can copy into your app. So it's like literally just this distributed cache extensions class, and that brings in some extension methods. And then there's a very simple example here setting that up. And then here in a controller, just using these caching extensions, cache get async. And so the idea here is like, number one, this is code you can use if you want to, but also they're looking for feedback on this. And this is probably something that they could productize and ship out NuGet package or just in ASP.NET or something. So
nice.
Yep. Caching is a tricky one.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about caching in a little bit. So maybe we should, bring this into what we're going to talk about and totally obsolete everything I'm going to say in about a half hour.
Yep. By the way, Matt, I just have to say the elevator moving behind you, your background looks so cool. It's like, oh, that must be a fake background, but you are on campus. Right?
I'm on campus. I was going to say, yeah, my lighting is not as great because it's a meeting room that I reserved for like 3 hours. And this is the real deal. It's like real people moving around and like people who actually work are back there. So you can actually see people who aren't working, they're going to just be kind of milling around.
Right.
Yeah. The old joke, I shouldn't even say this. The old joke when anybody asks you like, how many people work at Microsoft? You can just say, oh, about half of them, and you'll see the half that aren't working behind us. But no, it's cool that you got the conference rooms where you can actually see, have the big windows and you can see everything going on. So
very cool.
Yep.
All right. Let me get back to blasting through my community links. Let's do that. Let's add that back in. Okay. So I was close to done. Here I've got some from community. So this is Matt and Maps as he goes by. And this is just a neat little solution on one-time file downloads in ASP.NET. He's got an application, I believe it's Azure AD and Blazor WASM. And he said the guidance kind of has you do something that is like a JavaScript shim, and it's some stuff that didn't quite work for him. So he actually wrote a simple little handler. And what this does is it just generates a one-time link, and then the link will download the file. So he shows, very simple to use that. And so here, return one-time file. The nice thing from a user point of view is it looks like they're clicking a link in a web page and downloading a file directly, and this kind of handles all that. So, nice little tip to pass along. Andrew Locke, he's got 2 posts out today, or that I'm showing today. He's going through stuff in .NET 8. I love these series that he does. He always goes through in great detail. This one is this new Create Slim Builder. So we had Web Application Create Builder. It sets up a lot of things in your ASP.NET application, and it also maybe does it adds maybe a little too much. In the past, that made it easy to use things, but with AOT, it makes it more difficult to do trimming and to create the smallest application. So by using Create Slim Builder, that's just going to add in a minimum of stuff. He lists out some of the things that are not there. So, like startup assemblies, that's a great example of something AOT can't trim that out, right? So several different things, and then you can manually add stuff in. So it's more of that kind of pay for play.
Nice.
So, yep. Another thing here, going into the minimal API source generator. So again, I was mentioning source generators before. This is because of the way that minimal APIs are built, it's a lot easier for AOT to kind of go through and optimize them. A lot of abstractions that were in MVC and carried forward into API controllers are not there in minimal APIs. So it's a lot easier for optimization. So here he just kind of goes into some details there. I'm moving a little bit quick because I want to allow some time for this. So we've got the reliable web app pattern blog post, and then we've also got this workshop. This was honestly the first time I really kind of dug into it. I'd read the blog post, but I got to help out with this workshop, and I think I should just probably turn it over to you, and we could go into more detail there.
Sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and share my screen.
All right. And there we go.
All right.
Okay.
So let me know if anything goes wrong, John, because I'm running a Mac, but running a dev box. And so I have like 2 screens open.
Okay.
And yeah, so if anything goes wrong, let me know and we'll try to fix it somehow. All right. So you should see something that says Enterprise Web App Patterns on a really cool or PowerPoint template that I did not do.
I do.
Yep. All right. So what's cool about the enterprise web app patterns is a lot of the times, John, we're very good at saying at Microsoft, you know what, you can do things this way or that way or the other way, go ahead and pick your own adventure. Every way will work, and there's no wrong way to do it. But the problem with that is that it kind of leads to confusion. And, it's like, well, what's the right way to do it? Well, there is no wrong way, but what's the right way to do it, And so that's where we wanted to get at with the enterprise web app patterns, is that we wanted to have like a prescriptive guidance for a cloud journey and saying, do it this way, because like Taylor's team, which I think they used to be called the customer advisory team.
Yeah.
Now they're like the customer engagement team, I think.
Oh, that sounds right.
Yeah. So anyways, so this is stuff that they've, hard-earned victories of going out and working with customers on these huge, large-scale products or engagements and finding out what works best. And it's really this first one, reliable web apps. It's the first step in the journey, and it's moving over from on-prem to the cloud. So it's your very first step into your cloud journey. And so what we're doing is that we're going to be making the minimal amount of changes that we have to in order to get things up in the cloud and being reliable. So low cost, high impact. That's what this is all about. And so not rewriting a lot of code. And we'll get into what code that we might want to rewrite, but it's like a old time. It's an MVC app, and we'll show what it is in just a second. But it comes down to, I think, 5 different pillars that we have that we're going to talk about here and there: reliability, security, cost optimization, operational excellence, and performance efficiency. So of those reliable web app pattern, you kind of think of it as a pattern of patterns. And so it's also kind of like the singletons, a pattern. We'll have patterns like that in there, but we're also, if you go look at cost optimization, we're going to have patterns for the people who make decisions based off of money, or performance efficiency and operational excellence. Those are DevOps or IT, like the people who actually run the machines. Those are patterns for them to follow. And so it's everything built into one that people can have for reliable web apps. And the best part about it, John, is that you can pick and choose what you want. Let's say you just wanted to do something for reliability, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what's all in that pattern and a bit, or pillar as I like to call it. If you just want to implement that, go ahead, just implement that, and you can stop there, and that's perfectly fine. Or pick, cost optimization. Just, get your thing costing as little as you can. Perfectly fine. Or put them all together.
I really like how these are, like you said, they're different things, different businesses, different applications may care more about them. I tend to see like this progression across them. Like as I'm building an app, right? I may be building a small proof of concept or something. Step 1 is it's got to actually work. Like, let's make it reliable. And then, definitely want to look at security early on. And then as you look at productizing it, and, it's like, well, let's not, I've definitely seen a lot of apps where they're built in a way that makes sense at a small scale, but then you ship it and it's like, oh, this is going to cost way too much, right?
Yeah.
It's running on a bunch of VMs or whatever. So, and then like it's out in production, let's make it excellent. And, and then it's like, hey, okay, this is great, but now with scale, performance becomes more important. So it seems like a progression there about it.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, you're right. Like getting it reliable, making sure. I always like to say it doesn't fail in the face of success, right? Like you think of like the day after Thanksgiving here in the US, like it's the big shopping day, and you don't want your consumer-facing app to go down on the day that you're going to make the most sales, right? Yeah. And so you want it to be reliable in the face of success. And yeah, so that's the reliability. You want to have it up. And cost optimization. You don't want to over provision things. If you don't need 99.99% uptime, why have it? Don't over provision things. And we talk about how to figure out exactly how to compute your SLA, your service level agreement, from across a bunch of different Azure services, which is pretty cool.
And I've had this conversation with people. It's like, it's actually kind of in Microsoft's interest and the Azure team's interest to help you optimize your costs, right? Because if your experience with Azure is, this is way too expensive and they're selling me a lot of stuff I don't need and I feel ripped off, you're not going to stay around as a customer, or you're not going to be a happy customer, right? The best is to sell you the services that make sense for you, and getting that right balance dialed in is important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just want to get you up and running with, I guess, the minimal amount that you need to be good. And then once you're happy and you want to build, great. And if you don't need to build, don't build, or don't go on. So as I kind of alluded to before, the reliable web app patterns kind of built off of the Azure Well-Architected Framework. So accepted patterns to build on Azure, and also 12-factor applications, which is a methodology of building actually like microservice applications. So what we're doing here is actually setting you up for the future as well. So we're not refactoring into microservices. That's not part of this. We're just getting you up on Azure here, but we're going to kind of get you set up for the future in case you wanted to take that next step and move along.
I hate to keep interrupting. This is such an
No.
interesting conversation. So this well-architected framework, this comes from applications we've built with customers, large enterprises and stuff. My initial experience when I looked at well-architected framework is very thought through. It can be very complex, and it can also be kind of expensive if you use the entire thing, right?
Yeah.
So this, what you've got here, this reliable web app pattern learns from that and from 12-factor applications, but then lets you kind of dial up
exactly
what's important to you, right?
Yeah. It's like somebody else read the book and wrote the Cliff Notes edition for it and put it in. So it's based off of it, but it's not the full thing. Okay. So because you're right, because that does gonna get a little complex and expensive, and you don't need that all the way. So the reliable web app pattern here, we're going from a legacy into your app, whether it's running on a virtual machine already in Azure or you're on-prem, and we're just converging to the cloud. We're getting everything up and we're popping it in the cloud. And we're going to talk about all the patterns underneath, at least for this part. We're going to kind of hit on it before, but we're going to obviously use .NET because that's what we know and love. Based off well-architected and 12-factor apps. We use the Azure Dev CLI to push everything up and deploy to the cloud. And now that's part of the pattern. You don't have to use that when you get to production, but it has a ton of benefits if you do. And once we get over to operational excellence, we'll talk about what that gives to you. And then actually it gives you a lot of CI/CD stuff. And then observability is part of app monitoring your app, and then service level agreement measures, and then cost profiles. So all of those things right at the bottom are kind of like some of the attributes that you get as part of the reliable web app pattern. And then over on the side here, you can kind of think of those as the patterns that we're going to implement. So this is a slide with a lot of words in it. It's just going to say, you know what, we're going up to the cloud and we're going to cover a lot of stuff here, but you know what? Do what you want, implement what you want, because this is going to show you how to do it. It's going to give you prescriptive guidance on how to implement stuff. So, yeah, lots of words. All right. And speaking of words, here we go again. So this is I guess, our guiding light when the team was writing this application of what they wanted to do. And it really is, they wanted to refactor an old time. I keep on saying old time, not the latest and greatest ASP.NET, but an older ASP.NET app, SQL Server database. So pretty much what everybody's writing. It's what I write all the time is forms over data. Essentially, you're saving data. Let's bring that up, make it ASP.NET Core, get it up to the cloud. And we're getting guidance as well, cost efficient, and meeting some key objectives along the way. So that's what reliable web app pattern is for .NET. There's also a Java one coming, but we love .NET. All right, so let's take a quick peek at the application that we're going to be building, or what actually comes with the with the reliable web app pattern. So John showed this before, but I'm going to bring it up again. So we had the reliable web app pattern workshop, which we'll have a link for in the show notes. And that's a workshop that's, oh gosh, probably for each one of the pillars, for each of the 5 pillars, there's actually a module of the workshop that you can run through. You can do it at home. And one of the things it does is it brings you back to here, this GitHub repo, which has everything you need to deploy the reliable web app pattern, and walks you through along with all the patterns within it and showing you what you need to do, and tells you everything and links out to the documentation. We link out to some videos with it. So this is like the home base for it is right here. And we'll link out to what this is as well. All right, so once you deploy it, you get this. You get a dashboard. So like you can go into the Azure portal and kind of see what's going on. So that's part of what you would want to set up if you're actually doing something production. And that's one thing I want to drive home. This is a production ready app. So if you happen to be building what we'll show in just a second, you could use this. Or you know what? You just wanted to be building a application insight dashboard, use this. Go ahead and just use it.
Question for you. I love these dashboards.
Mhm.
Whenever I do them, it takes me a little while to set them up. Are you
Yeah.
saying this is built in, like this configures it for you, or did you spend a half an hour dragging and dropping these around?
Oh no, John.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting my
John,
money's worth out of this.
hold the phone here. I'll open it up in GitHub and let's see where it is. It's right here. Okay, so we're jumping ahead here. So this is
That's
Bicep.
what I do.
And look how small this is right here.
Oh my goodness.
And it goes through and it puts everything that you need in here. So Bicep is essentially, it's a infrastructure as a language, or language as infrastructure. And it's going through and creating every single one of these for us. So we can just essentially deploy it, and it does. And look at this position X3, Y0, where in the column and how much it should span. And so, you know what, this is actually kind of a little, and it's like saying, you know, where to grab it from and all that other good stuff that you have in here. Like, goodness. It's a little bit overwhelming of where everything could go, but, you know, kind of just get a hold of it or copy the whole thing, put it in, and, you know, oops, don't hit refresh, but you can get like failed requests, server response time, and all that stuff.
A few questions coming in because I diverted you to talk about Bicep. One thing is, I think the word bicep came from, like, it's kind of a joke on ARM. Is that true?
Okay. I think so. Yeah.
So ARM is like what, Azure Resource Manage something, what manager?
I think. And yep, exactly.
And it's kind of like not as much of a defined language as Bicep, and so then Bicep lets you write kind of more.
Yeah, exactly. So Bicep, let's look at something a little bit easier. Probably this Azure storage might be a little bit better. So it's cool, but you could so Bicep, if I remember correctly, actually gets compiled into ARM, and that's what gets executed on Azure to create your resources. And so everything you do in ARM, you can do in Bicep, or vice versa. But it's easier to read, you know, like, so we're going to pass in this parameter called is production, and it's a Boolean. Another one, location, and it's a string. I mean, so this is, you know, very, as a .NET developer, kind of, it's intuitive, you know, what's going on here. And then you scroll down, and here, when we name this resource, this is our resource type, it's storage account. This is the, I guess the best way to say this is we're defining both the Azure resource as the first part, and the second part is kind of like the Bicep version of it. So as you progress this like 2022-09-01,
Yeah.
you might get more parameters in it. So that's kind of what that's doing. So we're creating a storage account using this bicep version, and we're giving it a name. We're saying some tags, the location. So it's kind of cool that we're able to set that.
And I know I made you kind of jump ahead, but when my experience doing this workshop is you are working with a decent, it's good to kind of have some familiarity with as you get into it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it's not a beginners, I guess, a 101 workshop. So we're going to assume that you know ASP.NET. We're going to assume you know .NET. A little bit of bicep. You'll get to know bicep very well as you go through it. The cool thing is that it will work and deploy for you. So you don't necessarily need to know it, but it's good to know it, and you'll get to know and love it even more. So
one other prereq that that this relies on heavily too is AZD, right?
yeah, let's talk AZD. No, I love this. We don't need to stick to the script. Let's move along.
Yeah, I'm taking you all over the place.
Yeah, no, this is much more fun.
Oops, I'm trying to move my face.
All right.
There it is.
All right, CD community. So CD reliable -web -app -pattern. I haven't figured out how to get PowerShell to do autocomplete for me. I see that it does it, but all right. So AZD. Oh, let's open this up. So AZD is the Azure Developer CLI, and it lets you do things like deploying all those everything that we see. Let's actually move up, and so we could see everything here. Everything that we see here, the Azure Developer CLI lets us deploy that because everything is modeled as a bicep file, and it does it all for us. So we don't actually have to sit through the portal or sit with the Azure CLI and type it all out, and we don't have to remember the dependencies. So like you have to create the key vault before the blob storage or something like that.
Right.
It does it all for us, because it can figure it out and all that goodness. So it's a
big deal. That's really nice. So you basically define all your resources, and then it looks at it all and says, okay, I need the key vault before I can define the instance.
Yep, exactly. So let's go up here. Let's go there. And I'm just going to open up that whole folder. And so what happens then is we have a couple different things. Let's just close that up. First, let's close that, infra folder. So infra is where all our bicep files are, right? And so the main one that you need is called main. And that's what goes through and kicks everything off and starts calling everything else. And parameters has what you get passed in to it. And everything else is kind of just like a bicep way to create things. So like the way they've done it here is like they have one resource per, like Azure Redis Cache here, Azure SQL database. So they kind of split it up. So one service per file. It's a nice best practice, right? That's what we're showing you here. Do it this way, you're going to succeed and win.
Nice.
So what else then Azure Dev CLI does for you is that it creates a .azure folder. So what we do then, and it's done down here, is that we tell you how to deploy this thing. And we start saying, you know what? You're going to want to do AZD auth login, log into Azure. And then finally, AZD init my environment name. And so what that's doing is creating this Azure folder, creating this RWA community, because that's what I call my environment. And then it's going to start putting all of these variables in it because it actually goes through and creates it. So I'm going to do azd env, come on, Matt, env new, and we'll just call this on env. So I'm doing something very similar to this right here, except because I already have one, I'm just using a different keyword. So, so azd env new John environment, but just using less letters. All right, so it's going through, and now I've created my new environment. And if I go back to Visual Studio Code, I can see that it's right there. But I don't have as many variables in there yet. I just have the environment name, location. It guesses I want to put it in East US, and then my subscription ID. All right. So next thing that I want to do, let's go back and look, is, you know what, I'm going to copy my environment name so I know what it looks like, because we're going to use it in a bit. $$ equals JONENV. All right, good. And so then now what I'm going to do is we're going to leave isprod being false, because when we set it to isprod true, what the production or what the deployment's going to do is going to create a whole separate region for us. And we show how to do it. We just want one region, you know, for now. It's just development. And then it's azd provision. And if I hit azd provision, it's going to go through and create the whole thing for us. Easy peasy. That's all I have to do to provision everything. So I'll do that. And then hopefully by the end of this, by the end of the show, it'll be done. It takes a while, right? We're creating Azure. So it's going through and it's going to do everything for us. And it's going to create and update the resources. And as it goes, it'll start adding things to the env file, because as the bicep files have output parameters. And so it's going to say, hey, output, you know, we're not doing a multi-location deployment. Put it in there. You get to remember it for next time. Okay. So yeah. So it's cool. So Azure Developer CLI lets you do this. And then we can also do things like azd down. And what azd down does is that it deletes everything for us. And how it knows what to delete is, let me go into my resource groups. And this was RWARG. And if I just go into here, while we're creating everything, it's going to apply a tag to it called azd-env name. And this was just RWA community. So while it goes through and deletes things, or just looks for that tag and finds that tag, Azure Dev CLI says, goodbye, delete it.
Nice.
Which
Those
is cool.
tags are really useful. I've manually been putting them in, but so it's going through and automatically putting those in as part of the bicep scripts.
Yep. Even better now. Even better. It keeps getting better, John. Let's. So we can deploy code too. So there's something called azd deploy, and that's going to look at the azure.yaml file. And so this we would create by hand, right? And so what we're going to do here is that you give it a name. You can give it metadata if you want. But underneath services, this is where things get kind of cool. So we're going to say, you know what? We're going to call something the web service, and we're going to point it to the project directory. So tell it the language and tell it the host. So we're going to say app service. We could deploy to a function app. We can deploy to a static web app as well. We could even deploy to Azure Container, not Azure Container Registry, ACA, Azure Container Apps.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be calling that web, calling it that one API, telling it where to go get it and deploy it to. And then it's going to deploy the code to an app service called web, called API. Now, if I can find it here, which might take a while digging because they are large. Long story short is we apply a tag that says web or API when we create them as well, the app services. So by doing that, app registrations, it's probably gonna be down in resources. So this is, like I said, it's meant for production. So there's a lot of stuff in here. And so long story short, web app tags. Okay, so right here. So we're creating the web app. So we're getting a tags passed in. And so this tags here is that environment name, but we're also applying an AZD service name to it. And we're calling that web, right? And so then when AZD deploy comes along, it's saying, all right, web, I know to deploy the Relay Cloud.web project there. So it's all kind of like declaratively done.
Okay.
And so there we
So
go.
question, if I'm thinking about, okay, how do I apply this to migrating my applications?
Right.
What I'm taking away from this mostly is this is how I should manage my like infrastructure as code. This is how I should look at defining my application.
Exactly. This comes in the operational excellence portion of it. And what's cool then is that you can actually get to where is it? A GitHub actions. And then or is the Azure DevU MO. And then we could say, you know what, on a checkout, we can start, logging with Azure, and you can actually start running everything, because on GitHub Actions, you can run just right here, AZD provision, no prompt. And so we're actually going to say, you know what, because we're checking all our code in, all our bicep files. Hey, run that AZD provision. Here's all your environment stuff. We'll check it in as secrets in GitHub and do your thing. And then there's this AZD deploy and do it. So AZD now is running up on GitHub and doing all our good stuff for us. So that's the idea. Okay. Eventually that AZD, you can run it locally. You can then run it in your CI/CD world. And yeah, the benefits of CI/CD is that then you can back it out too once you pull a mat and you make a mistake and deploy something to production that shouldn't be there. So
that totally makes sense, because I had thought of AZD as a developer CLI specifically, but here seeing it as CI/CD, that's really useful. I can run the script locally, and then my CI/CD can run it too.
Yep. So cool. And it also runs on Azure DevOps as well. And we have an example of how to pop it in there, which is very similar if you're familiar with Azure DevOps.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. So the application itself, let's see. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's go back to resource groups, sort it, and let's open up the web app. And just the names of it are kind of hard to understand. And the reason we're doing these names like this is to make them unique, right? So this YIKN in there, it's because we're AZDing everything. We're just showing, give it a unique name, and that way you know that it's never going to fail the deploy. Anyway, so let's browse to it. And then this is Relay Cloud Concerts. Now, the only thing that's really not production ready for this is the user interface. And we kept the user interface simple because, you don't want to get people hung up on CSS or anything like that. Just kind of keep it, very plain.
Yeah.
And so this is meant to model a internal application. So despite it's called Concerts, it's really meant to be where a call center, somebody calls up and says, hey, Matt, I'm working, Matt's at a call center and says, you know what, I want to order a concert ticket. So I go and hit upcoming, hit say SQL database, and I could say, all right. Stein and Romand, they want that ticket, go through, and I can add it to the cart. So it's a shopping cart, and which is a reason why we picked that is that it's familiar, right? Everybody kind of understands the shopping cart paradigm. So you didn't want to pick something that was way off base, and you can go through the checkout and then enter a bunch of details and like pick whether it'll succeed or not. And yeah, and so let's just put one in there. And add purchase. And then it goes through, and assuming I have everything set up right, which I should because I AZD'd it, it's actually going to go out and generate an image of the concert ticket, which I should be able to view in my tickets. And you can see right here, oops, I'm logged in too. So it logs me in via
nice
Azure AD. And so there's the concert ticket, which uses, I forget how they generate it offhand, but it's put in a blob service, which library they use to generate it. But yeah, so there you go.
Okay.
So that's the application that we're building. So, all right.
So there's like several features along the way that you implement. There's like reliability and performance and security and stuff.
Yep.
Like the entire workshop takes a day to go through. Are there some like specific things in the pattern you want to kind of show off?
Yeah. So let's see. That's not what I want to show. Let's see. So let's just go here. So one of the things I like the best about it is like the reliability. That's the first one we go through, and that's just to make sure that we're talking about minimal code changes that get things up to Azure. And reliability is one of the things you want to make sure that you have, because you never know when the cloud's going to blow up on you, right? Or when things are going down. And so we took a monolithic application. That was like the idea, and we did break it up into just a web app and then a web API app. And so you never know, like when one app service will go down, or intermittent errors between, maybe you have a third-party service that you're subscribed to, and you want to, something like you're checking the weather or something like that. And so you want to make sure that you can handle those intermittent errors that go on. And so one of the things we show is retries and circuit breaker patterns. And the advice that we give is to first use, a lot of Azure services have built-in retry patterns. And so this one actually happens to be the entity framework retry pattern. So that's built in. That's not even a Azure SQL thing, but it's just entity framework. But the idea though is that it comes from a library, whether it's a Microsoft library or something you find on NuGet. Most likely, its retry pattern or way it retries is going to work great. So use it. So that's the idea here. Use the retry pattern there. Let's see, where do I have it? It's probably Startup.
It's nice too with these like retry libraries or things that are implemented, because they also handle some like anti-patterns. Because if you've got, sometimes if there's an outage and you've got everything automatically retrying, you can like overload it even worse, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's exactly it, is that you want to, John, you really just went into the next portion, didn't you? You knew what I was going to talk about. So that's the next thing. And let's, is this. So you have the basic ones built in to both like entity framework, or there's actually ones built into Azure SQL too that you can add, the Azure SQL SDK libraries. But there's one from Poly, our favorite library, our community library. And so let me uncomment these here. Control EU. And so you can build your own retry policy here. And so this decorrelated jitter back off v2, that's just a way to not kind of like backs off the retry, doesn't hit it like boom, 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 right away, because the idea is that these are transient errors going on. Like, so something weird has happened on the server. So most likely hitting it 3 times in a row isn't going to do it. So like kind of back off, give it a second to retry, give it a second to, catch its breath. And so what you do is give it this, HTTP policy. And then here we're adding an HTTP client to a service, this iConcert context service, which just happens to call a web API, which pulls back the concert. So we're saying, hey, you know what, this get retry, you have a transient error code coming back from the service. Give it a shot. Retry it 3 times. That's what this is saying right here. And this next one, as you just mentioned, John, circuit breakers is what you're kind of talking about there, is that don't keep on trying it. It's like give up after a while. It's
if it's broken, stop, because you're just doing more damage by continually pigging it, right?
Exactly. And then eventually, just throw an error, catch it, and give up. It's just it's a lost cause, and that's what the circuit breaker does. It's if you get 5 errors within 30 seconds, give up. It's no good.
Yeah.
So that's the advice that we give as far as resiliency goes, which is all the way down here. And so, and then kind of jumping ahead, retry, yep. Oh, security. Another thing, and I know we're running short on time, John, so stop me if I start going long.
Well, we do have some more time to go, maybe 10-ish more minutes. One question, though, somebody was asking, they like your terminal. I think that's Oh My Posh. Is that right?
That is correct. That's Oh My Posh with, I have with special fonts loaded up.
Nice.
And you know what? We'll put it in the notes. Hanselman actually wrote a blog post on how to do this. And so that's directly copied from what he wrote.
His blog post is great. They've actually simplified it some. The Oh My Posh docs and the latest Oh My Posh, because I've gone through this just recently, and they actually have some stuff built in that'll just say, go get the fonts. It's like built right into Oh My Posh now.
Oh, wow.
A lot of the manual work. So
Even better. Yeah, it's so great. It's so much better than just seeing the plain old PowerShell stuff.
Yeah.
So managed identity. So what managed identity does is that, how, John, when we join Active Directory, we're things in Active Directory, right? We're people. We have certain rights. I can go into, let's say, Key Vault. Where's my Key Vault? I can go into Key Vault and I can say, do we have access policies? No, we have access control enabled. And I can say, you know what? I'm going to assign roles. And I can say, Matt Soucoup, I'm a user, and I have app config data reader role, right? But we can have managed identities as well. So essentially what a managed identity is doing is we're saying, app service, you are now a user in Active Directory, and we can start assigning like least privilege roles to you as well. So we're treating an Azure service now as a user, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's really good. And, there's a funny little example of this. There's an internal tool someone on the team built a while ago. I just thought of this, but someone on a team built, and they had their own kind of account and everything. And then they left and went to work in another company. And then it's like, oh no, how do we log in? How does it work? Right. And that's an example of what this solves. If you have a managed identity that can be assigned and different people can have rights to that. But,
Yep. It's awesome. And and so there's 2 different managed identities. There's a user assigned one, and then there's a system one. So a system one is every app service or every Azure service will have its own identity. A user assigned one is I create a managed identity and I can assign it to different services, and we can reuse them across services. So if you want to have a bunch of the same permissions assigned across a bunch of services. You can use a user assigned one and just kind of give it away to everything that you want to have the same. So that's the difference. Let's see. The other thing that I really like here is that I want to talk about this. I'll save it for the last thing, is we do talk about, and I'll put these slides up. I'll load them up to GitHub so people can see them as well.
Cool.
Is secret rotation process, part of our operational excellence when we have them in Key Vault, how you want to change your secrets every now and then. You don't want to leave them the same thing. And Azure does have like primary keys and secondary keys, so you can swap them out and then rotate them. We talk about how to do that. And then I think, performance efficiency. We talk about the cache aside pattern. And that is actually something we should change now that I saw that blog post that you pointed out before, John.
Oh, yeah.
We should maybe swap that out for that, because here, cache aside pattern really is you're implementing, let's say, Redis cache. Mm-hmm. And what you want to do is, so Redis cache is like you don't have to hit the database to get your data out any longer, so it's faster. But the trade-off is that you have to manage your consistency, right? So if somebody updates the data, now you have to manage it in the cache. And so we go through and we actually show how you would do that. And it's not too bad. Is it in here? No, it's in this one. And so it's not actually too bad. All you're doing is right here, the cache. You make sure you remove the keys. So the cache has key values. So anytime you make a data modification, remove the keys of it. And then the fun part comes with when you're getting the data from it. If there's anything in the cache, just grab it. Super quick, right? But if there's not anything in the cache, go from the database, serialize it in the database, give it a time to expire, because you just don't want that hanging out. So here we're just saying, you know what, expire in an hour, so it's gone, and then you set it in there, put it in the cache.
Yeah.
So
caches are amazing. They can add so much performance to your application. They can also be really frustrating if they're not working or whatever. Yep. So having a really solid cache pattern is important.
Yep. And so we should take a look at their best guidance.
Yeah.
And see if we can put that in there. Yeah, because go ahead, John.
Well, quick question here. Paul's asking, are there any serverless functions in this application?
Not on this one. And so that's actually a good question. And I'll bring up my little slide here, because we just wanted to converge. We just wanted to take, minimal code changes. The next one, though, modernize, is where we start adding in other Azure functions. So modernizing is we start getting up to Azure functions and taking more advantage of the other Azure services. And then scale, now we're talking cloud native, right? Whether it's microservices, Kubernetes, stuff like that. So each one of these are different patterns to take advantage of different various means of making your application in the cloud. So converge is the very beginning, and then we'll start moving up. We don't have modernize and scale done yet. The team is working on it, and I can't tell you when they'll be done, because they are very, very busy doing.
With that converge, you get a lot of value for right at the beginning. And I think this is built on the kind of like quick, I don't want to say quick wins as in cheap wins, but they're like a lot of benefit out of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is low cost, high impact, right? And get everything up in the cloud. So number one, get it in the cloud and running, right? So I shouldn't say low cost, because you are going to incur some, when I say cost, some people cost writing code and moving stuff, but high impact, right? So getting it so it's up and running and it's reliable and stuff like that. So you don't have to rewrite your entire app and re-architect it to get it in the cloud. You can get it in the cloud, but you're going to have to make some changes. And so here are the changes that you're going to need to do to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, of actually going in and writing the code. So if you have to make changes, these are the changes you should be making.
Okay.
All right. And so the last thing, John, the very last thing, and I'll be quiet, is I love this. I love this. Choosing the correct resources. Nothing to do with development at all. But when I figured out, I didn't do any figuring out. Somebody actually told me. When I learned about this, it was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. So let's say you had a service level objective. You wanted your app up 99.98% of the time.
Mhm.
That's what you needed. You had all of these Azure services that were involved with it. In order to figure out, based off all these Azure services, what your uptime was.
Oh, you're going to throw some math at us, aren't you?
Yeah, right. But I'm not going to break out the calculator because I can never get Windows calculator to work for me. I can only get the calculator on my phone to work, right? But you multiply them all together. All those things, you just multiply them together, making sure you put the dot in front of the first line, real percentage. And then it comes out to be 0.9956 or 99.56, which means 38 hours of downtime a year, which may or may not be acceptable. So brain damage, blah, blah, blah. So if we wanted to get it to 99.98, what you do, and this is crazy, the formula is 1 minus n. So 1 minus 99.56 or 0.9956 raised to the number of regions. So 2. So take 1 minus 0.9956, square it, then subtract that to 1, right?
Okay.
And then you have 99.99. Cool.
So those regions definitely help out.
The regions definitely help out. Problem is, though, you have 2 different regions, right? How do you route traffic between those?
Mm-hmm.
You need to add something in front of that. And so like front door is the thing to do. That has a 99.99% uptime. Multiply that together, and so now you get 99.98. Okay. That's crazy. So much math involved. Who would have guessed? But that's how it goes. So it's yeah. It's just fun to try to get it to work on your calculator once you know the right answer and just try to multiply all those together. Anyways,
so I'm conscious of your time. I know you're at VS Live Redmond.
Yes.
And so I think, if there's any kind of final things you're like, I got to show this off, you can, but I think we should go towards where do you go to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, we got it done, John.
Whoa!
John N is deployed. We didn't to push the code on because there's actually one thing that we needed. We needed to initialize the Active Directory, which is a second step. But let's look here. Refresh. RG.
I do recommend too going through this workshop. Like you can go through it. And, if you're trucking along half a day or something, and you learn so much. I learned a ton going through this.
Yeah, you can. I think it's definitely worth going through, and it's in GitHub, so you can raise issues if you do have any issues, and we'll make it better. So here's everything. Here's everything from the John E&V resource group.
Wow!
So it worked. We deployed.
I am enterprise.
Yeah, fully 99.95% uptime. So where you should go is aka.ms/EAP for enterprise app patterns /RWA for reliable web apps /.net for .net. And that'll bring you out to the main repo.
So let me get that again. AKAMS EAP .net.
AKA, right there. Yep, EAP RWA.net, and that'll bring you to here. Or .net/workshop will bring you to the workshop.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me add a banner because I like banners.
Yeah, do the workshop. Come go through and let us know what you think of the workshop. Love to make it better.
So there's the workshop, and then there's also docs that are linked off of there.
Yep.
And then the docs will show you more about here's how this specific thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the docs will walk you through the architecture and how to apply it. They'll cover a lot of the things that we just talked about, but in more documentation type language. So, but pretty much the same thing we hit on, like, hey, use a central secret store, which is Key Vault. And they also talk about like private endpoints. So networking things. If it doesn't need to be out on the internet, put it behind a private, secure it with a private virtual network and all that other stuff. So a lot of stuff we talked about, but they kind of go a little bit more in depth with it. Yeah.
There was one question that came up a few times, just as part of that. A lot of this is talking about like improving your applications, whatever. This question came up on modernizing, and this is one that I pulled together a bunch of different things. This is kind of our best just on modernizing your .NET apps, especially linking over. This shows the modernization series. This is for ASP.NET app, moving from MVC 5 to .NET 7. So a lot of the time these things kind of go together, right? It's like, as you're moving to the cloud, you're often needing to do that. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Cool. Yeah, that's always a thing when we say modernizing. It could be one of two things. It could be the cloud modernizing or bringing up the latest .NET. So sometimes you want to do both. You don't necessarily have to. I think Hunter at the last .NET Conf, Scott Hunter showed how to run a .NET Framework app on App Service.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't have to go the latest .NET if you don't need to, but it's always good to, if you had the time, why not?
Yeah. So. I think with that, he was actually showing MVC Music Store. He pinged me and he's like, where's the source code? I want really old code. I'm like, I have that. Well, okay, this is awesome. And then you talked about stuff that's additionally being added on over time. So let me know as we've got more stuff to show off.
I'm looking forward to getting all those done or having the team do them. And I get to talk about them.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, I will let you go to do amazing things at VS Live and have fun. And thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you, John. I had a lot of fun.
And warning, the peppy music is going to play us out.
Oh, I'm gonna hang up for a while then.
All right. Here we go.
All right.